Once workers stop accepting falling living standards, defiance might be contagious. That terrifies the Conservatives because solidarity amongst workers is Tory kryptonite. Listen to former Tory Chancellor Ken Clarke on Radio 4.
This rail strike is, if it succeeds, going to give tremendous impetus to a return to the old wages prices spiral that we suffered from in the 1970s and the 1980s. And I'm afraid that it cannot be allowed to look successful when it settles, because, as we've already heard, the rest of the public sector, who are comparatively underpaid compared with railwaymen, past railway militancy and government weakness has made the railwaymen at every level comparatively much better paid than comparable workers in the rest of the public sector. Governments always give in to them, usually. But on this occasion, if the pay settlement is, say, 10, 11%, then you're going to have vast amounts of the public sector induced to go in for the same militancy, same strike action, in order to demand at least the same.
For Ken Clarke, it's vital the strike doesn't even appear to succeed. Presumably that's why the government is refusing to negotiate directly with the RMT, because even negotiation is too close to the appearance of success. And Clarke thinks the appearance of success can only lead to more demands from other unions. And that can't be allowed to happen. But we have bad news for Ken Clarke. It's already happening. Both the National Education Union and the NASUWT have announced that they will call strike ballots if the government doesn't agree to improved pay for teachers. The teachers want an 8% increase, below inflation, but have so far been offered only 3%. Joining them are postal workers, represented by the Communication Workers Union. They've notified Royal Mail of their intention to ballot their members over strike action against a measly 2% increase, a real terms cut after years of wage stagnation. And in what would amount to an historic turn of events, the unions representing NHS workers are set to ballot their members too. The UK College of Nursing have never called a strike before, but they're calling for a 5% pay increase for their members. Both Unison and the British Medical Association have said they may strike if pay demands are not met to combat runaway inflation. The Criminal Bar Association has announced a series of walkouts taking place over the next month. There's a lot to follow here, isn't there? That follows a 43% real terms fall in the legal aid budget since 2005. So how do the Tories defend themselves against this worker solidarity? In the only way they know how, by trying to turn workers against one another. Speaking to Sky's Kay Burley, Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab made exactly that move.
How long are you going to let the strike go on for?
We can't allow, I'm afraid, the unions in this very militant way that they've proceeded to win this argument, because it will only hurt the poorest in our society.
Why is it militant? They're exercising their democratic right to strike.
Well, I think, look, let me tell you why. I think there's been a £16 billion package funded by the taxpayer, the very people who are suffering as a result of this disruption to trains. That's £600 per household in this country. Saying that you can't win in this negotiation and then disrupting millions of people, including students who are trying to go and sit their exams, including... And by the way, Kay, it is always when we have these strikes, particularly when we're talking about the trains, that the blue-collar workers suffer the most, the people that clean...
well, they know that, but they've still voted to strike.
Well, the RMT members have, but in broader, and that's just rail workers, but I'm just saying, the cleaners, the electricians, those who cannot work remotely, like many white-collar workers can using Teams, these are the ones that are being disrupted the most.
So let's get this straight. The RMT is hurting blue-collar workers and the poorest, they say. But not only that, the railway workers were handed £600 per household during the pandemic. Well, the reality is that money was used to keep private rail companies afloat while customer numbers collapsed. It wasn't workers who were bailed out, but shareholders. And now they say workers should be grateful that the government didn't allow our whole rail network to collapse in a pandemic. Sometimes, this strategy reveals itself in even more desperate forms. Tory MP Tobias Ellwood has also appeared on Sky, and he was asked what he thought of the rail strikes. His answer was utterly bizarre.
Well, I do hope, we're talking about the cost of living crisis here. We face huge economic headwinds, yet here we are causing such huge self-harm as the country is brought to a halt. I think Russia must be enjoying the self-inflicted distraction, pleased to see that the one government in Europe that is actually standing up to Putin is completely distracted in this way. I do hope the unions now call off future planned strikes. There's a new deal on the table. This isn't just disrupting commuters, including key workers, but also students as well, and indeed the hospitality sector, such as in Bournemouth. That's nationally, I think, will lose around £1 billion this weekend. It's also, can I say, Armed Forces weekend this Saturday. And that's where we say thank you to those who served and have served. I say to the unions, please don't be Putin's friend.
This is a telling moment. In a crisis, the image of draining Western power stretches from Ukraine, where Boris Johnson marches around as a war leader, to every track and station where Johnson fights his war not against Putin, but against workers. And he believes they're one and the same. But what these Tories don't understand is that in a sense the RMT have already won, because they've reminded workers of the power that they have. As life gets harder and your wage is stretched and stretched again, it can be easy to forget how vital you are. It's not just defiance that's contagious. It's the reclaiming of dignity and power by workers, and the recognition that strength comes with solidarity. Moya, can we expect a hot summer of resistance?
I do think the RMT here have sent a shockwave through the UK population with such a strong showing. It will obviously depend on the outcome of this strike and whether the government do move to crush it, which we know they're capable of doing and are in the position where they want to do that. The question is whether other unions follow. I think the other thing we need to remember is that these unions cannot act alone. If we want to have a successful show of resistance, we need to be shoving at it from all sides, as I think Diane de Prima once said. This needs to be a coherent strategy. And one thing the left have fallen down in the past is with a coherent strategy. So we can't just expect the unions to be fighting their corner and then not coming up with any other forms of resistance. This is a real opportunity. For example, there's a mass campaign that was launched this week called Don't Pay, which is trying to build support for a bill strike in October if the government have not made moves to ensure that the energy crisis is affordable for everyday people. And that's just another example of this kind of resistance that we're seeing bubbling up. But this won't work unless we get people on side. And I think it's amazing to see, RMT striking. But we also have, we who are not members of unions, or I'm a member of the National Union of Journalists, but if you're not a member of that particular union, if you're not, for example, in an organized labor movement yet, this is the time to get involved in some way, because we need all these people on board in order to make this a summer of resistance that stretches far beyond just this season.
All of us here at Novara Media are working harder than ever to keep scrutinising establishment politicians and the media barons who protect them. We don't have billionaire funders. We don't have advertising partnerships. We're funded entirely by you. If you've ever thought about supporting us, now's the time to go to novaramedia.com/support and donate anything you can from just £1 per month. Defy the corporate media. Join our monthly supporters and help build our supporter base to 10,000 strong.